I thought and thought of thy crass clanging town to folly, till convinced such dreams were ill, I held my heart in bond, and tethered down fancy to where I was, by force of will. I said, how beautiful are these flowers, this wood, one little bud is far more sweet to me than all man's urban shows. And then I stood, urging new zest for bird and bush and tree, and strove to feel my nature brought it forth of instinct, or no rural maid was I. But it was vain, for I could not see worth enough around to charm a midge or fly, and mused again on city din and sin, longing to madness I might move therein.
So, Mark, in this sonnet, we've got a lot at the earlier part about how bad going to town, the urban environment is, and yet at the end, suddenly there's a longing to be there. Tell us what the woman, the person who's speaking, what's going on here?
Well, I think there's this dilemma going on in this poem. And, you know, in the opening line, you've got that alliteration being used. I thought and thought of thy crass clanging town to folly, still convinced such dreams were ill. And I think there's this real idea about the country versus the urban, really. And I think, again, she doesn't really want to go completely to the city. And I think in this poem, it's possibly London. But there is that little bit in her that says there's perhaps that excitement that she could really get on in the city and forget the town, you know, and the country.
I mean, there are a couple of wonderful bits of wordsmithing, like this din and sin, for example.
Yes. I think, again, Hardy really is very theatrical with his language. You know, the city, the urban is where everything happens. But I think this last volta, really, isn't it, within the sonnet, mused again on city, din and sin, you know, as though to say it's dingy, it's going to be, you know, there's lots of sin, it's, you know, it's not moral. There is always that sense of morality in Hardy, and I think it's really shown through this dilemma in the speaker.
Becky, from her in the country, how do you react to this poem?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one. The dichotomy between country and city is really important. It's either rural and urban. And that's something, of course, Hardy struggled with himself throughout his life. These kind of beginnings as this young Dorset boy, moving to London, not really finding what he hoped to find there, his longings to, you know, be in Oxford, and then eventually moving back to rural Dorsetshire. And so I think this is something that he talks a lot about in his poetry, these longings for the country, but the urge to be drawn towards the city, towards this kind of metropolitan area of change and excitement. But it's also important to recognise that those things were happening in Dorset as well. They were happening on his own doorstep.
Now, this, of course, is written supposedly with a woman's voice. Do you think it's successful in a male poet writing about a woman from the perspective of a woman's voice, or not? What's your feeling?
I think something that might be slightly problematic in this poem is positioning the woman as being one of nature and one of the earth, and then immediately kind of juxtaposing that with the man being of the city and of progress and of din and sin, I suppose. And especially thinking about that coming from Hardy writing in the woman's perspective, it almost feels like he falls into a bit of a trap with it, which I don't think he does across his works generally. He's normally quite good at you know, having strong female voices, but I think in this one a little bit he kind of falls into this romantic trap ever so slightly.
Well, this is the second of our poems about Thomas Hardy's time in London, and probably about Eliza Nichols. And we'll be hearing some more of those poems about Hardy's time in London over the next few videos. But now let's hear some of those lovely alliterations and rhymes once again.
I thought and thought of thy crass clanging town to folly, till convinced such dreams were ill, I held my heart in bond, and tethered down fancy to where I was, by force of will. I said, "How beautiful are these flowers, this wood! One little bud is far more sweet to me than all man's urban shows." And then I stood, urging new zest for bird and bush and tree, and strove to feel my nature brought it forth of instinct, or no rural maid was I. But it was vain, for I could not see worth enough around to charm a midge or fly, and mused again on city din and sin, longing to madness I might move therein.